world is divided and lays in broken heaps because man is divided within himself. We have so much physical anxiousness because of the repressed sexuality. We needed to get all that energy out so that we can actually relax. And you experienced it yesterday. Those meditations, they're chaos. Osho designed meditations where we can shout. It's really just about letting off steam. The ego gets exhausted trying to maintain face all the time. So the minute you, the ego has to disappear. But then there's stillness. That's what men do. We sit still in the chaos so that we can lead from a place of rationality.
A post you put on Instagram a few weeks ago was a picture of you and an American flag behind you, and you said, "Make America alpha again." What did you mean by that?
We're living in a time of breakdown. Men are demonized, women are victimized, or there's not as many male role models. Boys need to be taught how to be men.
I've got 2 sons, and I'm thinking, how do I raise men?
Did you circumcise him? And circumcision is violence towards his sexuality. What is that saying to the world about the value of men?
There's a point where a male-only kind of dominant society does hurt itself. No? Should women have the right to vote?
I'm gonna pass on that one. It's not about sexism, it's a spiritual battle. If we can rise above the black and white of things, the male and female of things, we can come back together with one another.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
It's time for you to man up, to once and for all tell your mind who the fuck is boss. I need a fucking answer. What's it gonna be?
I don't know what it is about this fucking sport, but it attracts people that really need to do deep work on themselves.
I failed in this city. All these bad memories. I never really felt like I gave a fuck about me or my life. I almost killed myself, like.
Think about something that is going to drive you when it really hurts. Some kind of demon you want to fight.
This is not Pussy Man, this is Iron Man. Under pressure reveals true character. What are you gonna do? You're gonna be in Chattanooga, May 20th or what?
I'm a massive fan of Elliot Hulse, and I actually didn't think it would get much better than our first interview where he jumped around the studio and waved his arms like a shaman. But this one was even better because the day before this, I spent time with him at his grounding camp, and we did Osho bioenergetic active meditations where we screamed and we shook our head and we bounced around, and we did it to become better versions of ourselves, more expressive versions. And he believes it's time to make men men again, that we've lost out on key aspects of masculinity, and that's what's wrong with the world, because we don't feel comfortable about being men and doing all the things that men do, the ugly stuff and the pretty stuff. And so Hulse has been thinking about this for the last couple of years, and now he's really focused on helping young men be the best versions of themselves. I don't agree with everything that Elliot said, but I think he has some interesting ideas, and I think we need to address this problem now before it gets out of control and both sexes end up being just the same thing, because they're not, and we should embrace the beauty of both men and women. So really enjoyed my time with Elliot. I know you're going to enjoy this. He gets really personal at the end and talks about things that he never spoke about before. So check this out and make sure you put some changes in your life. And of course, in the London Real Academy, we're putting our own changes through. We're about to launch our Business Accelerator, 8 weeks. I teach you how to turn your idea into a business just like we did with London Real. Here's a little bit more about what we do on the inside.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Elliot Hulse, the American strongman, strength coach, and CEO of Strength Camp. You are a self-made entrepreneur who overcame learning disabilities and disadvantages to become one of the most prolific, visionary leaders to a generation of men. You run the Strength Camp gym in Florida and travel the world holding grounding camps, which I attended yesterday, that use tribal dancing, breathing, and active meditation to help men break free from self-limiting beliefs. Elliot, welcome back to London Real.
Thanks for having me back.
It's great that you're here. It's been almost 3.5 years. I can't wait to talk about what happened yesterday because, you know, the whole bioenergetics and the Osho active meditation, you know, you put me on to, and I want to go through that whole thing. Before I do that, I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for the community of people all around the world, of men all around the world. The last time I met you, I had known about what you did, but I hadn't started practicing, you know, the active meditation stuff until later. I started doing it in the parks. I almost got arrested one time from screaming out loud in the parks. I woke up from the tranquilization phase to 2 policemen over me who had been getting complaints about someone yelling in a royal park in London. And then later at one of our big live events with 200 people there, I actually walked people through, you know, a very short part of one of the active meditations you teach, I think the warrior one. And the experience was tremendous. The feedback was amazing. So just really want to thank you for that. And you know, I think that pushed me further into a lot of things we've done here at London Real. And if I look at the movies and some of the guests, Elliot, it's always like I'm attracted to kind of this alpha male who brings in this kind of spiritual component, or this component that gets men in touch with their feelings. And it's no coincidence that it's Dorian Yates who talks about spirituality. It's Ido Portal that talks about getting into the mind through the body. You know, my latest movie, Iron Mind, with a guy like, you know, John Joseph of the Cro-Mags, hard-talking New Yorker. And we get into the body, things I've done with Jocko Willink and you. And so, yeah, just want to thank you for doing all the stuff that you do. And you have no idea how many people you've reached through, you know, everything you've done. So just want to say thanks for that.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Like I said, I want to get into the energetics, but I want to start by talking about a post you put on Instagram a few weeks ago where it was a picture of you and an American flag behind you, and you said, "Make America Alpha Again."
Yeah.
And I know this is something I've seen you trending towards in the last couple of years. You know, you have your grounding camps, which are incredible, and I want to talk about them later, about really getting people into that physical and into the spiritual. But you started focusing really on men lately. And I think you've seen the need to address where we're at as men and the resurgence of the need for a strong man in our world. And I'm just wondering if we could start there. because you've really gone in this specific direction, and I want to talk about it. I'm sure some people understand it, some people don't like it, some people do. So talk to us about this.
Well, I'm the oldest of 4 boys. I grew up in a neighborhood with all boys playing football in the yard. I played football, captain of the football team. I was attracted to Strongman. I mean, everything that I did, like I say, I'm the king of boys. Like, it's always been about boys. It's always been about masculinity. It's always been about doing what men do in my life. And in recent years, I've 3 daughters, right? And I've experienced, I've been thrown into a world of femininity. And I got an opportunity to see the contrast between growing up as a boy's boy and a man's man. All my clients were always men. I trained athletes in my gym. It was always just men. So it was just, I was always around men. Now to be, you know, father of 3 daughters, and then to move in, and to start paying more attention to what's going on in the world as it relates to how men are experiencing life in civilization, I began to recognize, not only in myself, but in the world, how, you know, this contrast, almost like this, it seems almost like a fight between what's masculine and what's feminine in our society. You know, we see these movements where, you know, men are demonized, women are victimized. And so, you know, just paying attention to that and recognizing that there is some healing that needs to be done has brought me out in my desire to stand up for what I think is right, be there for men, and you know, and hopefully in that way bring some integration to what we're experiencing in terms of the division between sexuality and gender, even gender confusion. There's so much confusion going on right now.
Yeah, there's confusion over gender confusion and gender identity. That, like you said, men being demonized, women being victimized, probably not good for either sex. Where is the state of men? I mean, yesterday I hung out with a few hundred younger men, right, in their 20s. Like, and I saw them, and I thought, first of all, I wish I had something like grounding camp when I was their age. But I'm like, I was kind of faced to look at, you know, guys that are a generation younger than me, and how there's a lot of weird confusion going out there. There's messages being sent, there's gender fluidity, there's don't do this, do that. What do you think is the wrong messages they're getting, and what are you trying to tell them?
Well, you know, there's this push to eliminate traditional masculinity, traditional families. They use this term patriarchy to describe the negative aspect, apparently, you know, which is aggression and our, you know, our extroversion as men. Just a lot of the traditional and biological male attributes are looked upon with disdain and non-trusting, not trusting, you know. So when we live in a world when the society is such that when a boy comes into the world, what is natural and what is spontaneous and what is biological in him is not seen as proper and okay and needs to be trained out of him. And that's a lot of what the schools does. Number one, it robs us of our truth in biology and nature. And also, we are no longer living in a world where young men are given a resourceful purpose to follow or a path to follow. You know, we're taught to be good students, which is sit down, shut up, be more, like Jordan Peterson says, agreeable. You know, be more agreeable, be more feminine, really. And then at the same time, the training is such that we are made to be consumers more than producers, you know, which is feminine. Consuming is feminine, you know, the vagina consumes, takes in, the masculine, the penis produces, it goes out. And so our ancestors understood that boys needed to be taught how to be men. You know, we like to say that, well, you should just know what it is to be a man. Well, for women, they know what it is to be a woman because biology gives them the opportunity to become a woman, you know, like the period, the mark, it's right there. A boy, it's not the case. A boy needs someone to show him. And that's where the father comes in. And we live in a world where there's not as many male role models. There's not as many fathers. Fathers have basically been cast out. It almost seems as we're not needed to some great degree. You know, I don't need no man, and the government takes care of the women and the children. So there's no male mentorship, there's no male leadership, there's no mythology. That's another thing. Religion and mythology came about because men understood that men needed a purpose, but in order to ascend, to move towards something, we need an ideal. So, you know, Christians had Jesus as the perfect male to follow. All religions and all mythologies have this perfection of the man and this reach towards and the steps towards going. So today we kind of are skeptical of religion. We're skeptical of mysticism, or not mysticism, but mythology, and you know, we've kind of lost quite a bit in that.
Why do you think we trended that way?
Well, we've become very scientific, you know. So with the advent of science, which brought us tremendous technology, and it was wonderful and great, we've cast aside stories, metaphors, mythology, things that aren't necessarily materially true, physically true, but psychologically and emotionally true. You know, things like, so it's funny because, so for example, in the Bible, Jesus walks on water. Well, you got both ends of the spectrum where you've got people who take things so rationally on both ends of the spectrum, where they're like, well, that's impossible, that can never happen, therefore the Bible is wrong and it's based on stupidity. And then you've got the people who take it literally and who are like, no, Jesus actually walked on water. He could walk on water. Both of which miss the point because they're looking too much at the material of it. They're looking too much of the reality of it and missing that, wait, it's true in that symbolically Jesus tread the emotional. Water represents emotions. Jesus was able to tread, to walk above, to rise above the emotions, and therefore walk on water. When we can look at things mythologically and with that decoding of the symbols in our stories, we then gain the truth that is available in all of it.
And so we've gone kind of too scientific. We've rejected things we can't quote unquote prove. Yeah. It kind of degenderizes everyone, right? Because everyone's kind of now equal, same resources, same logic. The jobs now are kind of down to the logical brain as well. Mm-hmm. So you see all this as going in a dangerous way.
I don't judge it because, you know, we really are living at the end of an age and the beginning of a new age. In many traditions, this is described. And we can experience it by the breakdown of basically everything that's fundamental in our world. You know, this whole gender confusion thing is the breakdown of the most fundamental aspects of being human beings or living in the physical world, which are the positive and the negative aspects, the male and the female aspects, the yin and the yang. That is the building blocks of our physical experience here on the planet. For that to be confused means we're living in a time of breakdown. But at the end of every breakdown, there's a buildup. So as they say, the sun, it gets darkest right before the sun rises. Well, yeah, we're living in a dark time where there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of breakdown, wars and rumors of wars and defamation, and it seems like there's so much strife and people are against one another. We're more split than we've ever been before, but we're also more unified than we've ever been before. We've got the internet, which has brought us together more than we've ever been before. So we could focus on the darkness, we could focus on the breakdown, we could focus on the division and the wars, or we could turn our eyes to the light that's rising, and there are tremendous aspects, beautiful, wonderful, light aspects of what we're experiencing right now. We're just like straddling two ages though, you know? So having judgments about anything will just keep you trapped.
I've got two sons, 1 and 2 years old, and I'm thinking, how do I raise men? Yep. And I'm not always gonna be around, you know? And so I gotta do my work now. And I'm thinking of all sorts of things, you know, when do I do this? Yeah. When is martial arts brought in? How do I talk about sexual activity? I had Mantak Chia here recently, and we basically, I'm considering showing them how to use their sexual organs, you know, for energy, and to teach them from the beginning this is not some shameful piece or something you do on your own and masturbate in a corner. And like, I'm trying to think of where I need to take them. What do I teach them about gender? What is your thoughts on gender and neutrality, and like, what do you think we should be teaching young men?
Well, I have a question for you. did you circumcise them?
That's a good question. I actually didn't. But I would love to tell you that that was a great conscious choice, but I didn't choose to do it, and then I think it was too late, you know? And so that's a great question. What does that say? And well, yeah, tell me.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good question. What does it say that the very first experience that a boy has when he shows up in this world is violence towards his sexuality?
Not a good message.
What, you know, you don't have to theorize, you don't have to think too much, you don't have to deliberate it on it too long. It's pretty clear, it's pretty obvious. You're cutting off a piece of his genitals as soon as he gets here. What is that saying to the world about the value of men, the value of his sexuality?
Why do we do that?
Well, there are a myriad of different reasons. There's a really good documentary called American Circumcision, because we do it more than anybody over in America.
I know.
It's just basically standard. Here he comes, move on.
Yeah, I mentioned it to my wife, and she's from Bulgaria, and she's like, what? She's like, that's not normal there. But in America, it's just like, it's just done. Yeah.
So it is, according to this documentary and some of the people I've spoken with, it began as a religious rite of passage, and it represented a blood sacrifice in the Judeo-Jewish religion, which made its way over to America. And you're like, so okay, that was a long time ago in a different culture. How did that make its way over into America? In order to, because America was very Puritan, in order to stop boys from masturbating, because they believed that masturbation would create all kinds of mental disease and physical disease. So to help make your boys good boys that don't play with their penises, they push this idea that, you know, you should cut off this part of the penis which is highly sensitive, which has something like 80,000 very specialized nerve endings on it. So when, you know, you're severed or you're cutting that way, it takes away a tremendous amount of their sexuality. Now, when people look at it logically, it's pretty plain that that's probably not the best thing to do, or it's not the most humane thing to do to a human being. But then we have all of our, you know, things are propped up by our scientists and doctors, and whatever they say basically is. So, you know, they started using different reasons why, you know, it prevents STDs, or it's cleaner, you'll have less infection. They give you all kinds of quote unquote reasons why it's okay to cut off a part of your son's member, you know? So when we're talking about masculinity, and, you know, we could talk all day, I can't help but think about that original wound that each one of us carry around.
Right. Yeah. So that's a sign of that maybe something's kind of weird going on with our culture when we voluntarily, without question, kind of mutilate our own sons, okay?
Yeah, without question.
Right. So that's one thing. I remember as a boy being told to pull out the chair for a woman before she sits down. And I'm all for chivalry, but I remember thinking, and that was like 7, Elliot, and I thought, I'm being demasculated here a little bit. Why am I doing this? I just didn't know why I was doing this. And so I'm just wondering, what do you think we should do with gender? Should we say these men are men and women are women and this and that? My sister's in California. I think she's raising her son gender neutral. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
So is it time to put your line in the sand and say, I'm not doing this, I'm doing this?
It's very basic, it's very obvious. People like to say that gender is a social construct, like it's made up. That's made up. We are born with very biological differences. We're very different. And so, you know, all of the aspects associated with masculinity and how we show up in the world, protector and provider, are not taught to us. They are inherent. Science shows this. There have been scientific studies where they want to prove that gender doesn't exist and that it's a social construct, where they would have, you know, they would trade the roles, where the men would do more like in the home things, and women were given an opportunity to go out into the field. And in this society, I think this was done in, you know, 1800s, so it was done quite a while ago. They just naturally, gradually gravitated towards what they've always done, what feels good and what's right. So the women came back into their nurturing positions, and the men went back out into their building and hunting and and protecting jobs, you know. So It's weird to me that we even have to have this conversation.
Yeah, but we do. That's the thing. We really do. And in America, maybe even more so. I don't know. This is becoming, it really is becoming a thing, right? Having to deal with pronouns and deal with that stuff, or maybe that's changing. You don't want to be a part of that.
Well, I am a part of it, because I'm saying this right now. There are going to be some nasty comments about me being wrong. You know, it's the world that we're living in right now. And like I said, let's break down before the build up. So I'm not I understand that, like, we're being broken down and divided and destroyed. Our sexuality is being destroyed because it's dark. It's getting dark, and it's going to be dark right before the sun rises. So, you know, it's the world that we're living in right now. I'm not here to fight it or to stand up for anything, but I know myself as a man and the men that I lead and mentor and support. We fare best when we live in a world where there are boundaries and it's clear about why we're here and what we're doing. And if I can provide that and I can be a beacon for men in that way, then yes, absolutely, that's what I will do.
When you say meet someone who joined us yesterday, maybe a 25-year-old male, and you watch and observe things about his character, what are you seeing there that are big alarm bells, that just things to you that thinking, you know, I don't think this is the way it was, say, 100,000 years ago in our hunter-gatherer tribe. Maybe this isn't the way things were even a few hundred years ago. What are some of the things that are just big alarm bells for you in their behavior, their attitude, everything?
One of the things that gets really confused is the order in the home based on relationships. So we've done a great job of bringing women up and empowering them, you know, and it should be that way. But then it gets confusing as to who's the leader in the relationship. And traditionally, it was the men were the leaders in the home. We're the provider, we're the protector, we're the physically stronger ones. And women were the, like, Robin to Batman, you know, the nurturer and the sidekick in a way. And it makes sense that things are that way, because in every relationship there should be a leader. But what we're seeing now, it's very strange, is very emasculated feminine boys and women who can't trust them because they're not standing up and being strong. So women that then step up and become very masculine women. So, you know, and school does that. School teaches women to be more masculine, and it teaches boys to be more feminine. It almost like tries to equalize us. And then so boys are confused. They want to be good boys. They want to do the right thing. They want to, you know, do what seemingly women are asking them to do, which is to be less masculine, be more like women. But then women can't trust men because men aren't being men any longer. We're not strong. We're not firm. And so then the women step up, and then we have these relationships, which relationships aren't working these days any longer. Divorce rates are out of control, but that are backwards, where you've got the woman who's the leader, the woman who's the aggressor, the woman who's very masculine in the relationship, and then the men who basically, like, bite their tongue. They basically pander, and they become the feminine partner in the relationship.
Right, and women might think that that's what they want, but ultimately there's a weird kind of energy dynamic there that isn't quite right. So it's not congruent, and ultimately both parties aren't
both
very
suffer.
happy. They both
right.
suffer. So women
because
suffer
women go like
from
this.
men not...
Where are the good men? Where are all the good men?
Right.
Well, all the good men are trying to pander, or trying to be more like women.
Right, right. And is this something that's always been on your mind, or is it in the last couple of years where it's just like, wow, I need to start
It hasn't been
about
on my mind, because I have a wonderful relationship with my wife. We started dating when we were 14 years old.
Right.
And we were great. We have a great order in the home, you know. Like I said, I'm Batman and she's Robin, and she takes care of the kids, and she's a wonderful mother, and she cooks and she nurtures. Like, I can't see a better job as a human being to do than to bring forth and take care of children. And I go out and I protect and I provide and I bring home the meat, so to say, you know? So for me, that was instinctual, and that was the life that we created, and I kind of lived in a bubble, and I thought, like, this is the way it is best. It was the way it was with my parents too, you know? And it wasn't until I started getting lots of questions from young men about the challenges they're having. They don't know what to do with these women. And so I started looking into it, and so I started paying attention to what their concerns were, and I realized, like, it's very different out there, and it's very challenging out there. But at the same time, we have a tremendous amount of really good resources for young men coming up now. I'd like to mention Rollo Tomasi. He's got a book called The Rational Male. I think every man should read this book, because it's based on biology, and it tells you you know, not necessarily how to be a man, but it shows you the truth about how women are and how men are, and allows us to restore ourselves to our natural positions in that.
I was at the O2 Arena here in London about a couple months ago, and there were 7,000 people that bought a ticket to watch Jordan Peterson debate Sam Harris on stage. And I was in the crowd, and I walked in, and I talked to a bunch of people in line, and you see these men that have been given a direction, you know, 12 rules to life, being told, you know, stand up, stand up straight with your shoulders back, take some ownership, you know, your burden and all that stuff. We're seeing a resurgence of this need for people to tell us how to be men. What do you see when you see something like that? You see Jordan himself and the reaction to Jordan and reactions to what you're talking about. What do you see here?
We're remembering. We're waking back up. And so, again, you know, there has been this idea, which is very wrong, that there is something emasculating about man needing to be told how to be a man. Once again, biology does a great job leading women towards what is natural and normal for them. For men, we need role models. We need mentors. We need 12 rules or 10 commandments, you know? It's not a question, because if we don't get that, our energy is going to go somewhere, and if it isn't going towards resourceful rules and commandments, it's going to go towards, well, I'll figure it out on my own through gangs or through drugs or through turning it in on myself, and that's not resourceful for anyone.
Right. So by not teaching someone to be male and alpha to a certain extent, and maybe you can define alpha, beta, what that might mean, we're actually getting the worst behavior out of these men. Because it's this uncontrolled energy. Again, I saw these gentlemen yesterday at the event. If they didn't have something like that to direct their energy, where does it go? And I look at my past. Mine went into substance abuse. Mine went into anger. Mine went into all sorts of things. And so, yeah, so my question is then what is this concept of the alpha male, the beta male, and what are you trying to teach these men to do?
Well, one of the best ways to describe it is, as an alpha male, you can rise above emotional distractions. Beta is to allow yourself to be carried by the emotions within, and oftentimes women, which represent far more emotion than men, to be kind of carried around by women. So if we can detach from and look at ourselves and the emotional turmoil, like Jesus walking on the water. Jesus was very alpha. He's walking on that water. He's not allowing the emotion of the situation to carry him away. We then stand above the tumult of the situation. So alpha is to be rational, is to be like a mountain, is to be above it all, is to be firm in chaos.
Does it mean to dominate?
It doesn't necessarily mean to dominate. I don't know if dominate is the right word, because dominate sounds a lot like violence, but to lead.
Okay. You said something yesterday during the grounding camp. You said the most masculine thing you can do is remain still. What did you mean by that?
Well, think about a leader. Do you want a leader that's easily ungrounded and unseated? Or do you want someone who can sit still in the chaos of a situation? And that's what men do. We sit still in the chaos of the environment so that we can lead from a place of rationality.
Is there a place for the emotional man? Because there's plenty of examples of history of a man that's been maybe in tune with his emotions, maybe governed by his emotions. What are they, where is the need for that? Because there is a need, right?
Tremendous.
Okay.
Emotions aren't wrong in and of themselves. It's how we react to the emotion that is wrong, you know? So if we can sense the emotion rising, oftentimes they give us insights as to what's going on in the unconscious. So tremendous amount of intuition and insight is available through our emotions. When we suppress emotions, we're suppressing a tremendous amount of our intelligence. You know, there's intelligence in our emotions, you know, and that's why we consult with our women as well, because women are more in tune with the emotional world, the watery world, the earthly world. And so when a man, the question was again,
It was, what do we do with those emotive men? I mean, and how do we, you said it's important to have them as well. They're an important part of it. But I think you were kind of saying that you don't suppress the emotions. You kind of...
No, don't, yeah, it's not a matter of suppressing the emotion. It's a matter of looking at it objectively.
Not letting them control you.
Not letting them control us.
Okay. Yeah, I do consult with my missus sometimes and just get her take. Because
they're tapped into something.
Yeah, much more than us. I feel like they're much more in tune with energy and emotion sometimes than I am. Maybe it's because I'm out there trying to conquer and do those things. What's your take on the Me Too movement? What do you see that as, and the reactions to it, and how we've all felt about it? Because this is a lot about gender and this thing.
Anytime we have these kinds of movements, there's got to be a bad guy. And when the bad guy is men, that's all of us, you know? So now we've got people coming out from everywhere pointing to men being bad guys, you know, demons. So it's not to say that what's happened to some of these women is right, but now it's just creating more division, you know? It doesn't create unity, it doesn't create healing, it creates division. And once again, I don't have too much judgment about it, because things got to break down before they build up. Maybe we do need to be divided in that way for some time before we can actually begin to see both sides for one another, so that we can heal that.
And so we see like a real division here, and kind of a demonization and victimization, like you said earlier. Obviously there's some events, and we kind of have to deal with the crimes in these events. Yeah. But to try to alienate an entire gender is kind of dangerous in itself.
I think they call it identity politics is the term, where, you know, one side tries to gain power by being the victim against the other side. So yeah, victim and demon. And so there's a tremendous amount of power in that division. You know, the power gained by it, but then also a lot is lost.
It's also dangerous being the victim, right? I mean, it has a lot of short-term gains, but it has a lot of long-term downside.
Yeah, there's definitely a downside.
Because it kind of changes the way, it takes your power away, doesn't it?
Yeah,
being a victim.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you don't teach men to be victims in anything you do.
We got to all take responsibility.
Right. The election of Donald Trump, what does that show you about our relationship with the alpha, or our own maleness, and the reaction to him as well? Like, what does that teach you? Because like you said, you're kind of an observer, which is nice. And you're like, okay, we might have to go through this period. We're learning, we're not learning. What have you seen the last 2 years of that happening?
Donald Trump is really alpha. And a lot of people don't like it. And I'm not saying I agree with everything he does. You know, my political bent is more towards libertarianism. So, you know, less intervention, you know, I'm more for. But I think right now, with the way things have gone, we've needed a strong leader. The past several leaders have been very beta. And by mere virtue of the fact that a lot of people don't like him, and yet he still stays firm to his word and does what he says he's going to do, it's representative of the type of man that we're needing again in the world, and who ultimately we as men are going to aspire to and hope to become. You know, again, it's not about what he's doing, it's about who he is, the type of man that he is, firm and aggressive and active, speaks up, never lets himself be a victim. I think that's amazing. Somebody comes after him, he goes right back after them. He never panders, he stands up tall. You know, once again, you know, I'm just describing who he's being rather than, you know, what he's done. And a lot of what he's done has been really good too, also, if you look beyond what the media tells us.
Such as economy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bringing back jobs, you know, that were overseas, and opening factories back up. I mean, he's created tremendous amount of opportunities for a lot of the people who play the victim role and don't even realize it.
Do we need leaders like him? Do we need
I don't even have to say that we need it, but the world is showing that we need it by his election. I think also too, in Brazil, Bolsonaro, this guy, they call him the Trump of the tropics. He's another like alpha dude. And I think there's several other countries too, I don't want to say them and be wrong, but in Europe, where some strong leaders are emerging who are saying no, Like even I don't know what's going on right now, but with the Brexit movement from the EU, that's a very alpha move. You know, no, we're not going to go along and be agreeable with the way things are going as the collective. You know, that's a very feminine way, which is to get along and to go along. But to say, like a mountain, I'm firm, here I am, I say no, I'm not going to do that, is I think it's good. I think we've gone so far in the just allowing of things that when someone stands up and says no, which is what they're doing, I think that's great.
Do you think the election of Trump is a symbol that collectively as a society or as a world that we're tired of the feminization of men?
One part of the population, yeah, and the other part is that much more angry. So he represents polarity in its finest.
So it could be a symbol of that, but also an equal symbol of people who don't want that.
Mm-hmm. So it exposes the shadow, you know. So you look at a lot of the people who are for peace and love and unity, but they're really violent and angry and mean. You know, the left, they would describe it in many circles, are showing themselves to be really violent and really mean and willing to do whatever it takes. If they got to destroy someone's character or to destroy people's lives, they're willing to do it. And that just makes you question, you know, I thought this was about unity and peace and coming together, when in reality it's just about power.
You mentioned the media earlier. Let's put media and the internet kind of out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, what do you tell the young men that you teach? How do they interact with this thing? And the other thing is how do you know what to believe and what not to believe? Because like you said, if you trust the media, or if you read the New York Times, and I'm still currently reading the New York Times, I think I'm going to stop soon, because it's never been so obvious to me how biased that paper is on the front page. It's telling me their version of the events with their own agendas, versus maybe what's really happening. And I always like to say, what's happening around you? Right? Is your life better? What do you know? What's your immediate effect, and not what's happening with the world? But yeah, what is your relationship with that media, and how do you tell people to receive messages from the outside?
I've never really trusted the media. I was anti-TV before it was cool to be anti-TV. And it's so funny because, like, before we had children, I had all these plans about how I was going to raise my children, what we're going to do, and we achieved quite a bit of it. You know, Colleen had all natural births, nursed all of our children, natural births at home. And I have a traditional heart, and I like to do things in a traditional way. And so a lot of what I do is try to block out cultural influence. You know, it's kind of the rebel in me, kind of the old traditional man that's in me. When it comes to the media, which is your question, I intended to not have a TV in my house. This is how funny things are. Not have a TV in my house. I was like, that's it, we're not gonna have a TV. And I was on the way to establishing that, and then the iPads came, and the small phone, the little phones came, and the screens came. So it's like, yeah, we didn't have a TV, but we had all these screens. So it's like, I just couldn't get away from the screen. It's like God was just, there's going to be screens in your home, you know what I mean? And the reason why I wanted to get away from it is because of, look, you know, the family no longer has the amount of influence. The parents don't have the same kind of influence that they used to have on the family, you know, where now it's mostly the media, and it's mostly the schools, it's mostly the government. You know, they say it takes a tribe, but I'm not so sure I like what the tribe is doing. It takes a tribe to raise the children. I don't want that tribe to raise my children. You know, I'd much rather create our own values in our own home rather than have it being. So it's like I'm always having to fight against the cultural values now. You know, with my children, it's like I never thought that I would have to have a conversation about, you know, so for example that. Gender is not a made-up idea, you know. Gender is actually biological. It makes perfect sense, you know. But I have to have those conversations because the media plants those seeds and shows those ideas out there.
Right. So it's inescapable.
It's inescapable. Right. Yeah.
So
instead of trying to build up in another direction, I'm busy trying to defend from another, you know.